Can someone help me out here and explain why the Warriors are the front runners to get Giannis currently, at least by what's being reported by the media, right? And this isn't me being condescending or being sarcastic, but I just don't understand it from Giannis's perspective, right? Because to me, when I look at the Golden State Warriors, yes, could they be competitive potentially this season if Giannis is able to get that calf healthy? Going into the playoffs, could they be a real threat in the West? Absolutely. Could they be competitive next season and potentially the season after? Yes, depending on how Steph is aging and where he's at in his career. Absolutely, I think they could be a threat. Now, with that being said, does Giannis want to leave Milwaukee and be in a similar situation to where he's at now in just 2 years, or does he want the end of his prime into the later part of his career to all be him playing meaningful basketball? I would imagine the latter is the case, especially since the past 3 seasons they've been bounced in the first round, and this season Milwaukee's quite possibly just going to lose in the play-in and might not even make the play-in or the playoffs. Right now, they're if he were to not get traded there, I don't think they're even making the playoffs. So, with that being said, the reason I don't understand it is because from Giannis's perspective, right? He has to be willing to sign an extension, I would imagine, right? Or maybe the Warriors are okay with taking the Hail Mary. And I think Giannis, after this season, has one more season and saying, you know what? If Giannis doesn't re-sign with us, at the very least, we maximize Steph's career. Steph's going to be on his way out after, Giannis anyways, and we could just, see what happens there. I could see them doing that, but then all their future assets are essentially gone, and you're unable to trade Giannis because at that point Giannis is just walking in free agency. Steph Curry's retiring, and now you're just going to be bad. You know what I'm saying? So for me, when I hear the Warriors leading, I'm just not really understanding why. Now, could it be because none of these other teams are willing to make a move? If that's the case, okay, right? Like, I think even though I understand that OKC, the Spurs, the Rockets, maybe Miami, like there's other teams that have more assets and could really put together some exciting packages for Giannis, but because they're so competitive, they hold off, right? Like the Thunder don't want to make any rash moves because they think they're still the favorites to win the championship. They just won last year, and they don't want to have to give up any of their youth, right? Like they have guys who are on a similar timeline right now, and if you were to trade Jalen Williams or Chet, which I imagine one of the two would have to be included in the deal for Giannis, you're limiting your future a little bit, right? Because you're trading for a guy who's 31 as opposed to 24, right? So I get why they might hold off and see how they perform in the playoffs before, if Giannis is still available in the summer, and let's say, they get bounced in the second round because they run into Denver. Now they're like, okay, let's go make that move. I could see that, being where their headspace is at. Same thing with the Spurs, right? Like the Spurs are ahead of schedule in this sense. Do they really want to trade off assets like a Dylan Harper, um, like a Stephen Castle, which I assume one of them would have to be a part of the deal if they wanted to make that move for Giannis, right? And just see how things play out, right? They beat OKC 3 out of 4 times this season. They're getting better. They're progressing ahead of schedule. They may want to wait and see how things play out in the playoffs before making such a big move for a guy like Giannis. So I see why some of these teams who are better are holding off, but I just don't see why the Warriors are the move from the perspective of Giannis, right? And Giannis can literally say, you could send me here, but I'm not signing the extension. And that really makes it tough for teams to make sense of it. Now, again, because Steph is on a very limited, finite amount of time, the Warriors could just roll the dice and say, hey, you know what? We're going to give it a shot. We owe it to Steph. And we think if Steph has a competent roster, then who knows what's going to happen. And if they do that, then by all means. But I think they're literally, in that case, mortgaging their future because you run the risk of Giannis just walking in free agency because, after you trade all your assets, like, is that team good enough? You know what I'm saying? Is that team good enough with no Steph and Giannis and, a bunch of role players, and who knows what role players will be there, 2 years from now. So just my thoughts on the Warriors being the favorite right now in the media. I just don't understand it, to be honest with you. Um, but then again, I'm not really seeing it for other teams as well. Well, I just think some of the teams who would could get him the easiest are going to hold their cards close to vest until more things shake out, right? They're not trying to make a drastic move with only a week to think on it. You know what I'm saying? I think if a team like the Thunder, like San Antonio, like Houston, maybe, like even Minnesota, maybe, are probably going to want to wait until the summer where they have more time and another playoffs to see how things shake out for their roster before they feel like they're going to have to invest so much into a guy like Giannis, because the reality is Giannis is a top 15, 20 player ever. You're going to have to mortgage a lot to get a guy like that, and deserving. So he definitely warrants that price tag if a guy like Mikal Bridges is getting 5 first round picks. I did think earlier, and tell me what you guys think on this. You know, people keep saying the Knicks need to go for him, and the Knicks don't have that much draft capital. But if they were, right, let's just say hypothetically, if they were to go for him, people keep throwing Cat in the trade. And I think it's because Cat makes sense dollar wise. But I almost, if I'm Milwaukee, would rather take OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges as opposed to Cat and one of those two, right? So if it was Cat and Mikal or OG and Mikal, I think OG and Mikal might hold more value in terms of trades than Cat might, right? Not saying that those two are better players than Cat, right? Cat offensively, what he does at the center position, the way he can rebound that ball, the way he can extend the floor, he's a great offensive player. What have you? We know the deal with Cat, but what I will say, wings and versatile defenders are such a premium in the NBA, and both of them are cheaper than what Cat is. If you're able to make that make sense, and I think, right, OG just signed a $200 million contract last year. Mikel's on a um, pretty expensive contract too. I think he's making like 30 million a year. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on the numbers, but I would imagine you package those two together, the numbers get very close to a supermax, which Giannis is on. If you could do those two plus, like a host of draft picks and something like that, I would almost, as Milwaukee, prefer those two as opposed to Cat. And then if you're the Knicks, you get to hang on to a floor spacer in Cat, a great rebounder in Cat, a guy who can play off of Giannis pretty well, and Giannis still be the enforcer on the offensive end of the floor. I think that's I think that's a win-win for both parties if, right, they have enough draft capital, because there's no way if I'm Milwaukee I am leaving for anything less than like 4 first round picks. And the only reason I say four, which I think four is lowballing it, is because I think if you get back OG and Mikal, you could turn that into like four more first round picks. You know what I'm saying? Like at least, right? You could probably trade OG for, two and a player, maybe three, right? I don't know, but like you can get some significant stuff back for OG and maybe some expiring contracts to make the money work. And then you got Mikal, who he's not getting five again, but he can get 2 first round picks on a meaningful team, being the floor spacer that he is, being the versatile defender that he is. So for me personally, if I'm a Milwaukee guy, I think that's the route that I would take personally. I think I would go Mikal and OG if I can, plus draft capital. And then um, if you're the Knicks, you get to keep a floor spacer in Cat, one of the best big shooters in the NBA today that we've seen, what have you, and roll the dice and really have a big physical presence. You have Giannis who can cover up a lot of their flaws defensively because he's a great team defender, um, and go from there. Right, go from there. I don't know. I think that's the route that I would take if you're going to play ball with the Knicks and you're the Milwaukee Bucks. But let me know what you guys think. This is all just hypotheticals, right? Like I'm not in the know. I don't have relationships with some of these teams and these execs and stuff, but just my thought process. I just don't see why the Warriors are the front runners right now, unless they're the only team really bidding, right? Like they're the only team throwing their hat in the ring at the moment. But just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Peace.